thank you all for being here with us. We know that there's so many interesting talks at the same time. It's a pleasure for us to host you here. Let's start very quick. The idea of this session is you to know how we did the migration. Let's start first with the understanding what's our problem, the leader loyalty program itself, our motivation to migrate, the journey itself, the outcome, and some best practices and notes we took during the process. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Enrique Català. I'm the data architect at SCRM Leader International Hub, where I technically lead a fantastic team doing some amazing work. You're going to see a little glimpse of what we do in a minute. Over 20 years in the field, I've been lucky enough to work on many projects outside in different countries. And my passion for technology, data, but also teaching led me a 10-year tenure of being Microsoft MVP. You can reach me out in LinkedIn. Just turn Kartik.
Hey everyone, myself Kartik. I'm a specialist solutions architect at Databricks. I'm based out of Germany, and I have been in the industry for more than 10 years now. My primary focus previously was software engineering and architecture, especially focused on big data and AI domain. And now I focus mainly on data architecture, security, and governance in Databricks. Nice to meet you all, and please feel free to join, connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay, so I work at the Schwarz Group. Schwarz Group is a multinational retail giant that covers the entire value chain from production to recycling. Operating under the Leader and Kaufland brands, it stands as one of the world's largest retailers in the world. So beyond retail, the group excels in sustainable food production through Schwarz Production, leads waste management with the Pre-Zero, and also drives innovation with Schwarz Digits, which the drivers advance digital solutions. To put our retail division in perspective, please consider the revenue rankings. We are ranked 4th worldwide and by far the top largest player in Europe. Okay, so to give you a glimpse of what Schwarz Group is, let me share some facts and figures. Fiscal year 22, net sales 154.1 billion euros, around 13,700 stores and counting, with 575,000 employees. Currently represented in 32 countries and 6.8 billion store customers per year. Okay? But inside this huge group, my work is related with the retail division, specifically in Lidl brand, which is a sustainable discount grocery that offers a fast and uncomplicated shopping experience, both in online and in the shop itself. Okay, but within the Lidl division, I'm specifically working as a data architect for the Lidl Plus application, which, as I said, is currently one of largest in Europe, okay, one of Europe's largest loyalty programs. Okay, so, but what exactly is Lidl Plus today and why we rely on Databricks? Okay, because we are here on a Databricks conference. Let's picture this. You need to build from scratch a data platform that is capable of supporting more than 12,000 stores and counting back then. That is supposedly working across 31 countries and handling 1 trillion events per day, okay, working at petabyte scale. So back then, the list of viable solutions changed dramatically, and so that's why we chose Databricks 7 years ago, and because we needed basically a data platform that could scale as rapidly as we did, while supporting the robustness and trustworthiness that our internal users require. Okay, so I hope that gives you a sense of why we created FAR. So what's FAR? FAR is our data product, it's our data platform that we create to create data products. Okay, that's more or less super super high view of this. So FAR serves as the source of truth for all of our customers that creates valuable data assets on top of our Lidl Plus loyalty program information. So we have quite a lot of data domains working together with the same product, with the same platform to create those data projects. And then time now to show you a little bit of our architecture. So as you can see, it's a very straightforward architecture. It's a Lambda architecture, so that we use to process a massive amount of data. We complemented that with a medallion architecture in our data lake to robust data ingestion on both batch and streaming. But take a look at the diagram, because let me open this a little bit here, because I highlighted something here. I intentionally highlighted this to show you that this architecture has an issue, right? Because as you can see, the consumption layer can potentially access the storage layer without accessing the catalog layer. Okay, that's a problem that you may already know, because it's how Spark is working without Unity Catalog. And this setup specifically was a pain point for us, because we were forced to manage a very complex ACL matrix permission for storage. Okay, because just imagine how many users do we have. So it was a very pain point for us. But also the catalog layer, the high meta store, since we rely on HA and we take care of it, we decided to deploy the high meta store back then in a SQL server with a high availability in Azure. So we tried as much as we could to force developers to use the high meta store to access data, but then we are multi-region. That means that things get complicated. So we're forced to manage security at workspace, storage, SQL server, the high meta store. So things get complicated over and over. And now it's time to talk about our motivation to migrate. So it's not changing the slide. Okay. So on top of that, just imagine having quite a lot of data, domain-oriented teams building their own solutions on top of our own platform with their own security requirements. Okay, so workspace level, we are talking here quite a lot of Databricks workspaces, a huge number of Databricks workspaces. So to summarize, while we creating data products, valuable ones for our internal consumers, we face the problem of taking the cost of it. So the total cost of ownership of our platform raised accordingly. Okay, so basically, the trigger that forced us to start thinking on doing it was, for example, because we were forced to answer some questions during our internal audits. Questions that you may face, like, for example, how many sensitive information are you storing in your tables? Okay. How are any value produced in your tables? Are you able to know how the value is produced from the beginning? Can you know who is accessing that sensitive information? Can you list the users that are doing it? But things get complicated because you are producing data products. So if you think about it, it's not just a table. So you need something to control the cost and know, for example, which is the most valuable one. So are you able to know which is the best data product that you produce for your stack? But here is where the things get interesting. So the real trigger for us. So let's imagine you are producing a valuable data product, a very highly valuable that it's data product for quite a lot of consumers. But then you need to figure out, for example, can you allow access for this data product to different users, but masking certain fields depending on who is accessing that data product? Can you, for example, force that if you are executing a query from Spain, you only get data from Spain in that data product that could host data from 31 countries? Can you do that? Can you do that dynamically? Can you do something that tomorrow maybe the user that is querying this, that is only retrieving data from Spain, can potentially retrieve everything because now he's granted to? More specifically, can you delegate access control, okay, to a non-technical team that is the one who grants or revokes the access for those people? Can you do that? So we needed fine-grained policies that dynamically control who can access what data. This is our first trigger. This is the trigger that forced us the migration, right? So the second one was the Unity catalog itself, the discovery. We are building a marketplace, so we need something to show you what is offered in our marketplace. Okay? So, Artik.
Thank you, Enrique. I'm going to use the clicker. All right, so this works. Unity Catalog. A couple of years ago, Databricks introduced Unity Catalog. It eventually got feature-rich. That means Unity Catalog is not just a meta store. You have additional features along with the meta store, such as like basic access controls. You have the audit logs, the lineage, fine-grained access controls that Enrique required, like the row-level security and column-level masking. And also, you had this sharing capabilities based on delta sharing. With Unity Catalog managing access for you on the user level, you do not have to manage anything on the cluster level. So that means all the complexities and this additional overhead that Enrique was speaking about is gone. And this is basically how things are much more simple as well as much more performant in terms of productivity for the data teams within Schwarz. And this was something that actually triggered the migration, and Enrique was able to see the value in that and basically advocate internally to move to Unity Catalog. So the governance does not just apply to the data that is stored on the cloud storage, that is the ADLS or S3, whatever you use as the object store within your cloud provider. It also applies to the other data warehouses and data bases that is in the cloud. Like some of them would be like Redshift or SQL Server, things like that. So you can basically also use Lakehouse Federation to access data in these additional data sources and then also have governance within Unity Catalog. So this kind of not only simplifies things, but also extends the use cases. Whenever I speak to customers, there is a misconception that Unity Catalog is just another meta store, and why do we need to put in so much effort into moving to Unity Catalog if it is just a meta store? But the truth is, it's not just a meta store, and it has a bunch of features. So in the words of Enrique, we can put it in a way that it's easily comprehensible. So Unity Catalog is not just a catalog, but it is an evolution of Databricks. And that's why everyone has to move to UC. Now let's see how far platform moved to Unity Catalog, the entire journey. So there is a common Unity Catalog upgrade approach that we advocate, and this is not only applicable to the FAR platform that we did, but it is in general applicable to any migrations that you are doing. So this is basically starts with an assessment. What do we do in the assessment? So if you want to migrate something, first step you need to understand is what exists, and you clearly document what exists. That means it can be the number of workspaces, the tables that you have, whether it's managed or external. Do you use DBFS mounts? What kind of clusters do you use? What kind of code do you have? What kind of language you use? Etc., etc. So the first step is to do a thorough assessment and document it so that you can leverage that information throughout the migration process. Then you do the feasibility testing. You might have a lot of workloads, but take a sample of workloads that is a representational of the majority of these workloads, and then move it to Unity Catalog in a sandbox workspace or a dev workspace, wherever it's possible, and then basically try it out if it actually runs within the Unity Catalog ecosystem. And if not, if you face any issues, then you have to work with, probably with Databricks, and then figure out what is the mitigation strategy for that. There, we will help you out with that. And once you have these issues figured out and mitigation strategies drawn out, this will avoid any kind of showstoppers when you do the actual migration in production. The third step is basically to start with the designing and scripting of things. Basically, you need to design, okay, how many catalogs do you want? Do you want to have it per project or per business unit? Do you want to do everything in Terraform and things like that? So you design and you kind of also start scripting things. Then these two steps are also quite important. So you first start the migration in production on the upstream systems. That means the systems or the tables that are closer to the source. Because if you want to consume data from Unity Catalog from the downstream systems, it may be dashboards or any other tables that you're creating out of the source systems, you might have to use Unity Catalog. In that sense, it has to be on the Unity Catalog in the first place. So that's why you start with the upstream system and then you do the migration for the downstream systems. And then finally comes the decommissioning part. In case of FAR upgrades, so Databricks was involved and supported them throughout the initial steps until the migration of the upstream systems. And for the other two steps, sure, the FAR platform team did it on their own. So basically the process of upgrade looks like this. So what you do is like you have three major aspects to that. The first one is the global setup. That means you do the account console enablement, you kind of create the groups and other identities on the account level, and then you basically provision those on the account level to Databricks. And the second step is the architectural design. So this is important because in a large organization such as Schwarz, it's not just one single team that is working on this, it's a huge organization. There will be multiple teams, multiple platform teams, there will be a cloud team, there will be a center of excellence team, etc. So you need to align with all those teams and then come up with some decisions that is kind of repeatable and applicable to other teams as well. So that's why it's also crucial, especially for the large organizations, to have these kind of discussions and align on these decisions. And then comes the actual hands-on stuff about, okay, you set up the meta store, you basically also set up the initial catalogs that you want based on how you designed it, and then comes the part where it is applicable, the steps are applicable for each team, each platform team, so to say. In this phase, you basically do all the code migrations. Like suppose you have ETL workloads, it might be running within the workflows. Oh, sorry. Okay. So it might be because of the running of the Databricks workflows, or it might be an external orchestrator such as Airflow, in which in the FAR case it was an Airflow orchestrator. So you basically do all the upgrade, like which cluster, which kind of DBA version should I use for the cluster? Now I need to use the 3-level namespace hierarchy like the catalog.schema.table and stuff like that. But all these changes that you want to do, that you have to do basically, as well as the changes to any Terraform scripts that you have. And the final step is for each workspace. You basically assign a workspace to a meta store, you provision identities from the account level to the workspace level, and then also do all these actual upgrades that you prepared for in the code development stage. So you basically deploy the workflows, you kind of upgrade the clusters, you kind of also upgrade all the existing tables. So in the last step, you might have to think about how do you define this maintenance windows, because this might have some downtime. All right, so once you are through, once you are kind of doing this upgrade process, so you might have to take some decisions along the line. And this is also very important because you need to go from what is your goal here. Some of the customers, especially with FAR, what I said was like, okay, the goal was to easily migrate and do the migration as soon as possible. So the goal was to migrate sooner and then basically do any other changes after that. But some customers also can decide, okay, I want to have the perfect data model, the perfect data architecture. That means they want to redesign where the data lives, redesign how the data access mechanism works within the organization and things like that. So they want to combine UC migration with their actual data strategy that they have. This is also good, but this means you would have to put in more effort, and also the migration will take much longer time. So you first have to decide what your goal is, and then take a decision on some of the aspects of the migration. Because in case of FAR platform, what we did was basically we created only one catalog per environment. That means like FAR dev, FAR stage, and FAR prod. And we kind of did a lift and shift of all the schemas that existed within the previous Hive Metastore to the Unity catalog. So that means easier migration as well as faster migration, and any other changes could be done later, of course. And we stuck to the decision to use only external tables because Schwarz FAR platform had petabyte scale of data. Copying those data into another location to be on the managed table side would be a huge task. That's why kind of we avoided that, and we stuck to external tables, and we just decided to sync the metadata onto Unity catalog. I'll just show you how actually it's done in the next slide. And there are also some smaller decisions. Okay, we will have the platform team as the owner of these catalogs, and the schemas would be owned by the individual teams and stuff like that. Identity upgrade was also a bit challenging because like when Schwarz wanted to test it out, there was some issue, and also it ended up deleting some of the production users, which caused some issues. So we were really, really careful while we started developing a solution for this actual upgrade. And you might already know this concept. Basically, you define the groups on the Active Directory level. So the main IDP was Azure Entra ID. And then basically you provision those identities to Databricks. And we decided to go with the Python script for this because FAR platform wanted service principals as well as they had nested groups defined, which are not supported by the default SCIM connector. And then basically once you have these identities in the account level, you assign these to individual workspaces. The main takeaway from this is basically we enabled an additional feature to be on the safer side. So there is a feature called selective account sync, which is not popular, but it's kind of a optional feature that you can get it enabled if you want. You can just reach out to the account team and ask for that. What basically it does is like if you kind of disable a user on the account level, this user will not be disabled on any of the workspaces which is not Unity Catalog enabled. So this means this will have some safety net when you are doing some migration, because otherwise it would disable the users across all the workspaces within the account. And the next step is basically testing. Please do a lot of testing when you deal with identities on the account level, especially if you're a large organization. And for the FAR platform, what we did was we had a separate test tenant to do this testing itself, because we have the database account at the tenant level. It's not easy to test it, so that's why we use the test tenant. We also recommend to do that if you are trying that as well. And regarding the sync of the metadata, so basically what we did was, while we wanted to provide the option for the downstream systems to have data either from the Hive Metastore or from Unity Catalog, because if you are providing choice to the downstream systems to move to UC, it has to be gradual. We cannot say in some cases that you have to do it over a weekend or in 1 week or something like that. So the systems or the teams might take more time. That means the data should be available in 2 different places at the same time. And this sync command helped us a lot, because this would just replicate the metadata as is, and the data would be the same. You do not need to duplicate the data itself. And the teams would be accessing the same data either from Hive Metastore or from Unity Catalog, and this gave them ample amount of time to move to Unity Catalog without any downtime. And since the FAR had only external tables, this was 100% possible, and there were no complications or issues. As every migration, we had a lot of challenges as well. So what we basically wanted was to address these as and when it came up, and sometimes we also used our assessment to plan this ahead. So the 3 main categories are identity, data transformation, and feature replication. For identity provisioning, we based on like the Python script solution, because we had service principals and nested groups. For the roles, we just elevated the privileges for few users temporarily during the migration, so that they had the account admin privilege and Metastore admin privilege, so that they can do things much faster and easier way. And the goal was to kind of take away the privileges once the migration was done. And basically all the ACS that was there was kind of mapped to the groups on the as a UC permissions for all the individual groups that we defined, and decided to go with single meta store, of course, which is also the recommended way for all the customers. And basically, we already talked about the sync part. There were also some of the incompatible table formats, which we basically converted to Delta. We had some Terraform issues, which we resolved with modular approach. We also, as I said before, so we stuck to the external tables, but on the schema level, what we did was we defined a managed location so that if a user accidentally creates a managed table or something like that, it lands up in the relevant storage account and not in any common or random storage accounts. So that was kind of a safety net that we built. So we use external tables. We also defined a managed location on the schema level. And then basically we replaced all the DBFS stuff with the UC Unity Catalog volumes. And same with the credentials pass-through, we mapped it to the UC permissions on groups, and we fixed one specific version, especially the 12.2, while during the migration, and then we later upgraded these DBA versions once the migration was done. So basically, the main thing here is you can move to Unity Catalog in a gradual process. You do not have to do it on one go, like in 1 week or over a weekend or something like that. So you can do it gradually. So let's now Enrique will talk about the outcome of the
outcome of the UC migration. So now this is our new architecture. As you can see, it's nearly unchanged. It's basically the same, but now the catalog layer sits in between the storage and the processing layer, meaning that now we have a way to control who can access what and put something in between that really help us to achieve that security that we were forced to do using different ways, like storage, Hive, SQL Server, so you get the point. That means that for us, this is in reality a metadata platform as a service. This is what it's for us. Gone are the days of managing the Hive metastore and the ACL complex, the super high complex permission matrix. But it also helps us to achieve the seamless sharing, because we deploy all workspaces in the same Azure region. That means now you as a person can access the data no matter which workspace do you use, because security comes with you, no more with the workspace at workspace level, which is a real game changer here, okay? But also we have the automated lineage, the access control, and so other features that are available through the Unity Catalog. So now let's start explaining to you which use cases unblocked the UC for us on our side. We unblocked the federated sharing layer. I'm going to explain in a little bit what federating means for us, but you can imagine that we now have a platform that we can deploy with different flavors. We can choose to use only a deployment with only serverless SQL, with the full medallion, just one layer, up to us. Depends on the use case. The consumer that is going to use the our workspace will end up with a totally different workspace without Airflow, whatever. But the point is that all of them has this federated sharing layer. They can interact between each other. So we are working in a domain-based organization. That means that all domains has the same thing, different in technically speaking, but they are almost shared with this federated sharing layer. In regards to the federation, what we are able to achieve is what we call the zero trust access management. And this is only possible because now we have this federated sharing layer, which is in reality a centralized one, because everything comes and passes through the Unity Catalog, no matter which workspace are you using. And we are able to achieve that because we can create now a baseline for security at Databricks level. As you can see, the managed by Databricks means that you can achieve write some privileges on different Databricks roles at Databricks account. You can add groups, in our case, we are using Azure, so we have different Azure Entra ID groups in Azure managed by Azure, but then we have a third layer here, which is managed by SIAM. SIAM is an internal tool deployed and developed internally at the Schwarz Group that is capable of managing security across different cloud providers. Azure is one of them. So we can define a logical group that represents what we want to achieve. For example, customer data access. If you belong to the customer data access, you belong to a group in Microsoft Entra ID that it's synced into Databricks as a role, and this is where we apply the security. But then we add this third layer of federation and zero trust, meaning that no one by default is accessing to sensitive information. Everyone needs to request access to it, okay? And this is where it gets interesting, because now we can define something like this. Fine-grained access control, it's basically something that you can do with Unity Catalog. And that means that we can define for, at the column level, column masking to ensure that only authorized users are able to see what they are basically granted to. The row level dynamic and row filtering can enable the restriction of data accessing based on identity. So depending on row belonging, you, as a user, can execute a query that could retrieve masked or on-row filter based on who you are. But this is dynamic, meaning that, for example, in this image, the user 1 is capable of reading the entire table. The user 2 is only reading Spain and Germany data, but with the salary masked. And the third user is only allowed to see Spanish rows with both salary and IDs masked. But at the same time, tomorrow, if user 3 is granted to access the entire table, who cares? Well, it cares our federated governance model, because we have a three-layer different ways to manage the access. We can define a zero trust model with federated governance, because since no one is accessing data by default, everyone needs to request access to it. You can define a data governance team that is the one who approve or reject the access of the sensitive information, and they can be focused only on legal compliance. So they can be totally decoupled from your technical teams. And this is a huge win for all of us, because we can decide who is managing this, but my technical team never gets into it. So they can be focused only on technical stuff, and the real team that is aware of who can access what is the one who is doing it. Okay, so this is the real game changer for us is this thing. Additional benefits of moving to UC, a part of this huge win for us, is the different topics that we found. Like, for example, since we invested some time, thinking how to improve the deployment of the FAR workspace, we did it in a way that we basically reduced by 85% the resolution ticket of operations, meaning that our team is now focused on what it drives us, the innovation and maintenance, rather than maintenance of the operation cost. Another interesting thing is that we now have the ability of lakehouse monitoring, Overwatch, and now we can see and identify the high-value products and then strategize accordingly. Another important thing is that now that we are in Unity Catalog, we can enable serverless, which means that, for example, for our data analysts, they can focus on do analysis rather than maintaining their own SQL warehouse clusters, because they are just focused on what they get the most of it. We also noticed it was an edge scenario, but it's worth to mention that if you remember, we had the high meta store inside a SQL server. We found that it was a bottleneck after the migration, because The round trips on some ETLs, I don't know if it was just this, but worth to mention. This is one thing, and the other thing was that we were forced to upgrade the Databricks runtime during the process. Led us that the same ETL now is taking 50% less DBUs just for migration. It was the combination of both things. Also, we found during the migration, like any other migration, some zombie tables that we get rid of. And now it's not going to happen anymore because now we have control on what's the point of having a data product that is no one is using. Because thanks to that, we are not going to have this problem anymore. But also, we reduce the huge amount of workspaces because, as I said, the security is coming from the user, the identity itself, not by workspace anymore. Okay, so that was another huge win for us.
So to summarize, let's look at like what UC migration entails when you do it at an enterprise scale. Unity catalog migration is something of a complex, complex in nature, especially when you are a large organization and you have a different set of governance models within your organizations. That means it needs change management. So there are 4 pillars of this. So first thing, please do the assessment when you actually beginning migration. You can leverage UCX for that. So UCX is a project from Databricks Labs, and this is something that is being actively developed from Databricks. So this is being like feature rich and features are being added very often. And please also focus on team planning, like have a dedicated team for migration and also work with Databricks. So it can be Databricks account team, or also like someone like me and SSA can be included, as well as like you can involve professional services if you need. In case of FAR, so Databricks professional services and FAR platform team work together, especially Leandro, who was mainly driving this particular migration project, did an excellent job. And since Enrique has a really great team within the org, so they could do it themselves without any additional partners or something. But some organizations might need support from additional partners, which you can also seek out to scale your efforts, especially. And then internal alignment, as I mentioned before, please do engage early and transparently so that you have the right decisions before you start migration, and then you can avoid any unnecessary discussions or escalations. And then also timelines, please define the proper timelines based on the effort estimation that you do on the first phase, and then basically use that to communicate to other downstream systems and also other stakeholders of this migration, because this is crucial. Someone using a critical dashboard should know when something is going to be upgraded and stuff like that. And that's it. Thank you all for joining today.